When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Buddhist proverb. There is a quiet truth hidden inside these ancient words, one that echoes through every story you're about to enter. Nothing in our lives happens by accident. Every encounter, every struggle, every person who walks toward us or away from us arrives with purpose. Tonight, we step into a world where cherry blossoms fall like blessings, where old monks speak in lantern-light metaphors, and where the Buddha's wisdom reveals the invisible currents shaping our relationships. Let them show you how every person you've met has been a mirror, a guide, a lesson, or a lantern lighting your path. Nothing is coincidence, everything is connection. And ultimately, every connection leads you back to yourself. Our tale takes us to a peaceful mountainside monastery in ancient Japan, where cherry blossoms dance on gentle spring breezes, and the boundary between earth and sky seems to disappear in the morning mist. Here, among the temple bells and meditation halls, we find wisdom about the invisible threads that connect us all. In this remote monastery lived an elderly monk named Hotaka. Despite being well into his 82nd, his eyes still sparkled with the clarity of mountain lakes, reflecting wisdom gathered through decades of meditation and contemplation. Unlike many monks who sought complete solitude, Hotaka believed that our connections with others were essential pathways to understanding the deeper nature of existence. In the web of life, he often told his students, each thread touches countless others. There are no isolated strands. One particularly beautiful spring morning, as pink cherry blossoms swirled around his meditation spot beneath an ancient tree, Hotaka noticed a young man approaching the monastery gates. The visitor moved with determination in his steps, but uncertainty in his eyes. Hotaka recognized that particular look, the expression of someone carrying a question too heavy for their heart to bear alone. The young man named Hiroshi had traveled 17 days from a coastal village far to the south. Though he had never met Hotaka before, something had drawn him to this particular monastery, to this particular teacher. Later, he would describe it as a feeling like being called by a voice I couldn't quite hear but somehow understood. It was as though an invisible current had carried him there. Much like Buddha taught, everything arises from causes and conditions. Nothing exists entirely alone. After being welcomed and offered tea to refresh himself after his journey, Hiroshi finally gathered the courage to ask the question that had driven him across mountains and valleys to find this monastery. "Master Hotaka," he began, bowing respectfully, "I've been troubled by something I cannot explain. Throughout my life, I've noticed that sometimes when I meet people, I feel an immediate connection, a sense of recognition, as if I've known them before in some forgotten time. With others, I feel an immediate unease, a shadow crossing my spirit without clear reason." Hiroshi paused, searching for the right words. Do people come into our lives merely by chance? Or is there some invisible pattern I cannot see? Hotaka studied the young man's earnest face, noting how the dappled light filtering through the cherry blossoms created patterns of light and shadow across his features. For several moments, he remained silent, allowing Hiroshi's question to resonate in the space between them, like the lingering sound of a temple bell. "People never enter our lives by accident," Hotaka finally replied, his voice carrying the texture of weathered stone, gentle yet unyielding in its certainty. This truth lies deeper than the deepest ocean and reaches higher than the tallest mountain. Each encounter is a thread in an invisible tapestry that began to be woven long before you drew your first breath. The Buddha taught us that, in this world, we are all connected, We have been each other's mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers in countless past lives. This is not merely poetic language, but the actual nature of our existence, rising slowly, his joints remembering the passage of 84 winters. Hotaka gestured toward the sky above the monastery garden. Observe the birds. Young Hiroshi, they appear to fly freely, charting their own course through the endless blue. Yet each is supported by invisible currents of air that guide and shape their journey. We too are carried by currents invisible to the eye. The flowing rivers of karma, intention, and connection that began long before this life and continue beyond it. Nothing in this world happens without cause. No encounter is without purpose. As Buddha said, nothing ever exists entirely alone. Everything is in relation to everything else. Hiroshi considered this, watching the graceful movement of birds against the spring sky. The concept wasn't entirely new to him. Village elders had spoken of karma and interconnection, but he had never before considered how these invisible laws might be actively shaping the relationships in his life. But Master, he asked, if nothing is by chance, then why do some people bring such difficulty into our lives? Why do some connections feel like blessings while others feel like burdens? Hotaka smiled gently and motioned for Hiroshi to follow him into the monastery garden. The garden was a carefully tended masterpiece of simplicity. Stones arranged with purpose, plants placed with intention, each element in harmonious relationship with all others. Morning dew still clung to leaf and petal, transforming ordinary plants into jeweled wonders in the early light. Imagine your life as a garden, Hotaka said, gesturing to the space around them. Every person who crosses your path is like a seed planted by the hand of destiny. Some grow like magnificent trees that provide shade and shelter through many seasons of your life. He pointed to a majestic maple that had clearly witnessed the passing of many generations. Others, he continued, gesturing to a patch of wild flowers near the garden wall, bloom brilliantly but briefly, present for just a season before they return to the earth. Yet their beauty changes you, and the garden remembers their presence in the soil itself. Hiroshi nodded, beginning to understand. He thought of the village elder who had guided him through childhood after his father's passing. A sturdy, reliable presence like the maple tree. And he remembered a traveling musician who had stayed in his village for just 3 days, yet whose songs had awakened in Hiroshi a longing for something beyond the boundaries of his small fishing community. They walked in silence for a moment, following a winding stone path that led to a small stream running through the garden. Hiroshi knelt beside the clear water, watching his reflection ripple and transform with the current. The face that looked back at him seemed different somehow. Younger, yet older. More vulnerable, yet stronger. But what about those who harm us? He asked quietly, thinking of painful encounters and broken trust he had experienced. What purpose do they serve in this garden? Hotaka's eyes reflected a deep compassion born from his own encounters with suffering. Those who hurt us are often our most profound teachers. He said, they are like the sharp stones that line this very path beneath our feet. He bent down with surprising agility for his age and picked up a smooth stone from the edge of the stream. When you first step on a sharp stone, you feel only pain. But over time, the passing of countless feet smooths its edges. The stone remains a stone, but its relationship with those who walk the path transforms. Buddha taught, no one saves us but ourselves. No one can, and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path. The difficult people in our lives, the fisherman who ridiculed your dreams, the friend who betrayed your confidence, the stranger whose words cut like a knife, they each serve to shape your spirit in ways that gentle encounters cannot. They teach you where your path is not, helping you discover where it truly lies. Hiroshi considered this, remembering those who had caused him pain and how each difficult encounter had ultimately strengthened his resolve or redirected his path in unexpected ways. There was truth in the old monk's words, though it was not an easy truth to embrace. I have often found, Otaka continued softly, that the people who challenge us most are reflecting parts of ourselves we have not yet acknowledged or healed. The Buddha taught that you will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. This wisdom reminds us that how we respond to difficult encounters shapes us more than the encounters themselves. The old monk led Hiroshi to a small wooden bench beneath a flowering plum tree where they sat watching the patterns of light and shadow play across the garden. A few petals drifted down around them like gentle snow. There are fundamentally 3 types of people who enter the garden of your life. Young Hiroshi. Understanding their nature may help you welcome each with appropriate gratitude. Otaka paused beside a stone lantern, its subtle glow barely visible in the morning light, but still providing guidance along the path. First are those who support the structure of your journey, those who provide foundation, boundaries, and stability. Like the banks of a river, they may constrain you, but in doing so, they give direction to your flow. Then there are those who bring renewal, those who challenge your perceptions, introduce new ideas, or awaken dormant aspects of your spirit. Like spring rain on parched earth, they may disrupt your comfortable patterns, but they awaken new growth. Finally, there are the momentary guides, those who appear briefly at crucial junctures to illuminate a single step in your journey. Like this lantern, they need not remain forever to fulfill their purpose. A single moment of light in darkness may be enough to show the path forward. Hiroshi thought about the people in his life who had filled each of these roles. His mother, steadfast as the mountain itself, the wandering scholar who had taught him to read and opened worlds beyond his village, the old woman at the crossroads who had given him directions to this very monastery with such conviction that he had not doubted his path even when the way grew difficult. I begin to understand, Hiroshi said, but Master, how can I know which connections to nurture and which to release? How do I discern the purpose of each person who enters my life? Otaka considered this question carefully before responding. The Buddha offered guidance when he said, in the end, only 3 things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. This wisdom points to the heart of your question. Notice how each connection affects the garden of your spirit. Does this person's presence help beneficial qualities take root and grow? Or do they trample what is tender and beautiful within you? Your own inner wisdom will speak if you learn to listen. They sat in companionable silence for a time, watching the play of light and shadow across the garden as clouds passed overhead. Hiroshi felt something shifting within him, a new perspective forming, like mist clearing from a valley to reveal the landscape below. There is one more thing, Otaka said finally. Just as others enter your garden with purpose, so too do you enter theirs. In some lives, you are the sturdy tree providing shelter. In others, you are the brief but brilliant bloom that awakens beauty. And in still others, you may be the challenging stone that ultimately smooths to become a step on someone else's path. The Buddha taught, thousands of candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Your presence in the lives of others can illuminate without diminishing your own light. Remember this and move mindfully through the gardens you enter. As the day progressed, Hotaka shared more of the Buddha's wisdom about human connection. He spoke of how attachments can become suffering when we cling too tightly to relationships that have served their purpose. He explained the difference between love that liberates and desire that binds. And he taught Hiroshi practices to cultivate gratitude for each encounter, whether pleasant or challenging. When evening approached, casting long shadows across the monastery grounds, Hiroshi prepared to continue his journey, though he had intended to stay only long enough to ask his question. He now felt reluctant to leave the peaceful presence of the old monk. "I have one final question, Master Hotaka," Hiroshi said as they stood at the monastery gate. "How can I remember these teachings when I return to the busy world below, where it's so easy to believe that encounters are merely random, and relationships are simply what we make of them?" Hotaka smiled and reached into his robe, removing a small pouch. From it, he took 3 small items: a perfectly smooth stone from the stream, a dried cherry blossom preserved between layers of thin paper, and a tiny carved wooden lantern no larger than Hiroshi's thumb. "Keep these with you," the monk said, placing them in Hiroshi's palm and gently closing his fingers around them. "When you doubt the purpose in your connections, when you question why someone has entered your life, remember the 3 types of encounter and look for the teaching each brings. And remember the Buddha's words, if you light a lamp for someone else, it will also brighten your path. The connections we nurture illuminate our way forward, even when the path seems dark." With these words, Hotaka bowed to Hiroshi, a gesture of respect from teacher to student, but also an acknowledgement between 2 travelers on the same endless path. Hiroshi returned the bow deeply, feeling a profound gratitude for this encounter that had changed him in ways he was only beginning to understand. As Hiroshi descended the mountain that evening, the small treasures secure in his pocket, he found himself noticing each person he passed on the road with new awareness: the merchant with his cart of wares, the young mother carrying her child, the old farmer returning from his fields. Each no longer seemed like random figures populating his journey, but meaningful threads in the vast tapestry of existence. In the years that followed, Hiroshi would often return to the monastery to visit Hotaka and deepen his understanding of the Buddha's teachings. Eventually, he became a respected teacher in his own right, known especially for his wisdom about human connection and the purpose behind each encounter in our lives. When asked by his own students about the most important teaching he had received, Hiroshi would smile and say, "People do not come into our lives by chance. Each encounter is a seed planted in the garden of your spirit. Some grow into mighty trees, others into beautiful flowers, and still others become the stones that form your path. But none are without purpose, and all contain the potential for awakening." And on his meditation cushion, Hiroshi would still hold the 3 small gifts from Hotaka, now worn smooth with decades of contemplation. And remember the day his own journey of understanding truly began, with a question carried up a mountainside to a monk beneath a cherry tree. As we end this story, I invite you to reflect gently on the connections in your own life. Who have been the sturdy trees providing shelter through your storms? Who have been the brilliant but brief blossoms that transformed your perception? And who have been the challenging stones that ultimately guided your steps toward growth? Buddha taught that every human being is the author of his own health or disease. Similarly, we co-create the meaning in our relationships. finding the lessons each connection offers us. As you drift towards sleep, consider that every person in your life, past, present, and yet to come, arrives with perfect timing, carrying lessons your spirit is ready to receive. May you rest peacefully, held in the web of connection that supports us all, even in our dreams. The wisdom of non-inference when helping hurts. As the gentle light of dawn filters through the branches of ancient cedar trees, we find ourselves approaching a serene valley monastery known for its teachings on mindful action. Take a slow, deep breath as we transition to this new setting. Allow the tension in your shoulders to melt away as you exhale. Feel your body settling more deeply into relaxation. This story explores a paradox that many of us struggle with in our daily lives. Sometimes our well-intentioned efforts to help others can actually cause harm. The Buddha expressed this wisdom beautifully when he said, "If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion." But what does true compassion look like? Is it always rushing in to fix others' problems? Or might there be a deeper wisdom in knowing when to step back? In this peaceful monastery, surrounded by flowing streams, lived the respected monk Noro, whose practical wisdom drew seekers from distant provinces. Unlike many spiritual teachers who spoke in riddles, Noro offered guidance that anyone could apply to everyday challenges. Villagers and fellow monks alike sought his counsel when faced with difficult decisions or relationships that had become tangled like fishing nets. One crisp autumn morning, as red maple leaves danced on the breeze outside the meditation hall, a group of Noro's students gathered for his weekly teaching. Among them sat a young monk named Takashi, whose troubled expression caught Noro's attention immediately. "Today," Noro began, his voice gentle yet clear as a mountain stream, "we will explore a teaching that many find difficult to accept. It is the wisdom of non-inference, of knowing when helping others is truly helpful, and when it may cause unexpected harm." Several students exchanged confused glances. Surely helping others was always good. Wasn't that the foundation of their spiritual practice? Noro smiled at their puzzled expressions. "Life is like a great river," he continued, "and each of us is a small boat navigating its currents. How many of you have tried to steer someone else's boat without being asked?" Nearly every hand in the room rose, including Takashi's, though his movement was hesitant. And how many found that their well-intended intervention created unexpected consequences? Again, most hands remained raised. Takashi's face flushed with emotion as he lowered his gaze to the wooden floor. "Let me share a story that has been passed down through generations," Noro said, settling more comfortably on his cushion. "It concerns two childhood friends, Shun and Masu, who grew up together in a coastal village, much like the one many of you come from. From their earliest days, these two were inseparable, fishing together, celebrating festivals together, sharing both joys and sorrows. As they grew into young men, their bond was so strong that villagers often remarked it was like they shared one heart between two bodies. As adults, their paths diverged somewhat. Shun became a successful merchant with profitable trade routes to distant islands. Masu chose the life of a fisherman, following in his father's footsteps, though their daily lives differed greatly. Their friendship remained strong. One spring, terrible storms damaged many fishing boats and nets in the village. Masu, like many others, found himself in serious financial difficulty. The repairs to his boat would cost more than he could afford, and without it, he could not support his family. Masu was proud. However, too proud to ask for help, even from his closest friend, he began working extra jobs on land, determined to earn the money for repairs through his own efforts. Even if it took many months, Shun noticed his friend's struggles and wished to help. What good is my prosperity? He thought, if I cannot share it with those I care about most. But knowing Masu would refuse direct assistance, Shun devised what he believed was a compassionate plan. Without saying anything to Masu, Shun arranged to pay the boat builder in advance for all necessary repairs. He asked the craftsman to tell Masu that an anonymous village patron had created a fund to help all fishermen affected by the storm, and that his repairs would be covered through this fund. When Masu heard this news, his initial relief quickly gave way to suspicion. No such patron or fund had been mentioned in village council meetings. And why would his boat be repaired before others who had suffered greater damage? After asking questions around the village, Masu discovered the truth that his childhood friend had arranged everything behind his back. Though the intention was kind, the deception wounded Masu deeply. Noro paused here, pouring tea into small ceramic cups for his students. The warm aroma of green tea filled the meditation hall as he continued. When Masu confronted Shun about the secret arrangement, their conversation grew heated. I would rather have worked for a year to fix my own boat than have you arranged this deception, Masu said. Do you think so little of me that you believed I couldn't solve my own problems? Shun was stunned. I only wanted to help, he protested. I have more than enough. And you were struggling, but it wasn't your struggle to solve, Masu replied. Some challenges we must face ourselves to discover our own strength. Noro looked directly at Takashi, whose discomfort was now evident to everyone in the room. The Buddha taught us, no one saves us but ourselves. No one can, and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path. This wisdom reminds us that each person must discover their own way forward. What happened to their friendship? One of the younger students asked. It was damaged for many years, Noro replied. Though they eventually reconciled, something had shifted between them. The balanced exchange that had characterized their friendship was disrupted. Masu felt diminished by Shun's actions, even though they came from a place of genuine care. But surely it's better to have a repaired boat than to struggle, another student questioned. Is it? Noro asked gently. Consider what Masu lost in this exchange. He lost the opportunity to overcome a significant challenge through his own efforts. He lost the confidence that would have come from solving his own problem. And perhaps most importantly, he lost trust in the one relationship he had always counted on to be honest. The Buddha taught that suffering is our greatest teacher. When we rush to remove another's suffering without being asked, we may unintentionally deprive them of important lessons they need to learn. Takashi could remain silent no longer. Master Noro, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I think I have made this mistake recently. Noro nodded encouragingly, inviting him to continue. My younger sister has been struggling to pass her examinations to become a healer, Takashi explained. Without telling her, I spent many evenings rewriting her study materials in simpler language, believing I was helping her. Last week, she discovered what I had done, and instead of being grateful, she was upset. She said, I made her feel incapable, like I didn't believe she could succeed on her own. Now I understand her reaction, Takashi continued. I wasn't respecting her journey. I was imposing my solution without being asked. Noro smiled warmly at the young monk's insight. This brings us to the heart of today's teaching. The Buddha instructed his followers to practice karuna, compassionate action. But true compassion requires wisdom about when to act and when to wait. If someone is drowning and calls for help, by all means extend your hand without hesitation. But if someone is learning to swim and struggling with difficult currents, watching with supportive presence while they find their own strength, may be the greater kindness. A soft rain had begun to fall outside, its gentle pattern roof creating a soothing rhythm. The students sat in contemplative silence, absorbing the teaching through this natural meditation. Each person must navigate their own karma. Noro continued after a while. When we interfere without being asked, we disrupt the natural flow of cause and effect that guides each life toward awakening. Even Buddha, with all his wisdom and compassion, offered teachings only to those who sought them. But Master asked an older student from the back of the room, "How do we know when to help and when to step back? The boundary seems unclear." An excellent question. Noro acknowledged. The Buddha offered guidance when he said, "Before giving, the mind of the giver is happy. While giving, the mind of the giver is made peaceful. After giving, the mind of the giver is uplifted." This teaching points to both our intention and the results of our giving. Before offering help, ask yourself, am I doing this to genuinely support the other person's journey or to make myself feel useful and important? Will my assistance honor their dignity and autonomy or subtly diminish them? Have they indicated in some way that my help would be welcome? And perhaps most importantly, is this actually mine to solve? Many times, what appears as helping is actually interfering with lessons that person needs to learn themselves. Noro reached for a nearby walking stick and drew a simple circle in the sand garden beside his cushion. Think of each life as having a boundary like this circle. Inside the circle are the experiences, challenges, and growth that belong to that person alone. True compassion respects these boundaries. Sometimes the most compassionate action is simply to be present with someone in their difficulty, not trying to fix or change their experience, but offering the gift of your attentive care while they find their own way through. Another student raised her hand. "Master, I understand the wisdom of not interfering, but doesn't this contradict our practice of generosity? Aren't we supposed to give freely to those in need?" "Ah," Noro smiled. "Another excellent question." The Buddha spoke of dana, the practice of generous giving, as essential to the spiritual path. But true generosity comes without strings or expectations. It does not diminish the receiver or elevate the giver. Consider the difference between these approaches. One person says, "I notice you're struggling. How can I support you?" While another says, "I see your problem. Let me fix it for you." The first honors the other's wisdom and agency. The second subtly suggests they are incapable. The rain had stopped now, and sunlight began to filter through the paper windows of the meditation hall. Noro rose slowly and walked to the doorway, inviting his students to follow him outside. In the monastery garden, droplets of rain still clung to leaves and flower petals, transforming the ordinary landscape into a world of tiny jewels. Noro pointed to a spider web stretched between two branches, each strand now visible due to the rain clinging to its delicate structure. "Nature offers us perfect examples of non-inference," he said. "See how the spider builds its web, but doesn't control which insects fly into it. The web exists as an offering. The results come in their own time. When we offer our help in this spirit, creating supportive conditions without attachment to outcomes, we practice the highest form of compassion. We honor each person's right to their own journey with all its necessary struggles and discoveries. Takashi approached Noro as the other students began to disperse. "Master, I will visit my sister tomorrow and apologize for interfering with her studies. I see now that my actions, though well-intended, came from not fully trusting her capability." "A wise recognition," Noro said, placing a gentle hand on the young monk's shoulder. "And perhaps, instead of offering solutions, you might simply ask, what kind of support would be most helpful to her right now? The answer may surprise you." As evening approached, casting long shadows across the monastery grounds, Noro gathered with a smaller group of senior students beneath a gnarled pine tree that had weathered countless storms over centuries. "There is a final teaching I wish to share about non-inference," he said as they settled around him. "The Buddha said, the root of suffering is attachment. This applies not only to our possessions and desires, but also to our ideas about how others should live or how situations should unfold. When we become attached to our vision of how to solve another's problem, we create suffering for both them and ourselves. We must learn to offer our wisdom lightly, like an open palm holding water available to drink, but not forced upon anyone." An old farmer who occasionally visited the monastery for teaching spoke up. "Master Noro, I have been thinking about my son as you speak. For years, I have tried to make him follow in my footsteps and take over our family farm. But his heart lies elsewhere. He dreams of becoming a carpenter. I see now that I have been trying to steer his boat without being asked." Noro nodded thoughtfully. The Buddha taught, "Let go of the past. Let go of the future. Let go of the present and cross over to the farther shore of existence. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is releasing our grip on how we believe others should live." But the farmer continued, "If I don't guide him, how will he know the right path? Perhaps the right path for him is not the same as it was for you." Noro suggested gently. "Buddha reminded us that each morning we are born again. What we do today matters most. Your son must discover his own way of contributing to the world, his own form of right livelihood." The farmer fell silent, contemplating this new perspective. Around the circle, others began sharing their own experiences. Times when well-meaning help had caused harm, or when stepping back had allowed someone to find unexpected strength. As the stars began to emerge in the evening sky, a young woman who lived in the village below the monastery spoke of her elderly mother. "She has become forgetful and sometimes struggles with daily tasks. I have been taking over more and more of her responsibilities, thinking I was helping. But recently, I've noticed she seems sadder, less engaged with life." Perhaps Noro suggested there are ways to support her that preserve her dignity and sense of purpose. Instead of doing things for her, could you find ways to do things with her or modify tasks so she can still participate in meaningful ways? The woman's eyes widened with recognition. "Yes, I see now. I've been helping in a way that makes her feel useless when I could be helping in a way that honors what she can still contribute." The Buddha taught that health is the greatest gift. Contentment is the greatest wealth. True health maintains both the physical well-being and the inner wealth of contentment that comes from feeling capable and valued. As the gathering concluded, Noro shared one final story that had been passed down through generations of Buddhist teachers. Long ago, a man noticed a butterfly struggling to emerge from its chrysalis. The butterfly was working very hard, and the man felt compassion for its struggle, wanting to help. He gently used a small knife to widen the opening of the chrysalis, making it easier for the butterfly to emerge. The butterfly came out quickly with a swollen body and small shriveled wings, The man expected that at any moment the wings would expand to support the butterfly's body. But that never happened. What the man didn't understand was that the butterfly needed the struggle of pushing through the tight chrysalis to force fluid from its body into its wings. Without that struggle, the butterfly could never fly. His help left the butterfly grounded for life. This is perhaps the clearest illustration of our teaching today. Noro concluded, sometimes the very struggle we wish to remove for another person is precisely what they need to develop their strength. Our compassionate restraint, allowing others to face their necessary challenges, can be the greatest gift we offer. As darkness fell completely over the monastery, the gathering dispersed with much to contemplate. The simple teaching had revealed itself to be profoundly relevant to countless situations in their daily lives. Takashi remained behind, helping Noro extinguish the lanterns around the meditation hall. "Master," he said quietly, "I've been thinking about my sister again. If I hadn't interfered with her studies, she might have developed her own methods for understanding the difficult material, methods that would have served her better than mine." Yes, Noro agreed. And there's something else to consider. By struggling with the material herself, she would gain not just knowledge, but confidence in her ability to overcome challenges. That confidence might serve her even more than the information itself when she faces difficult cases as a healer. "I see that now." Takashi nodded. "The Buddha's words about being our own refuge make more sense to me. We must each discover our own inner strength." "Exactly." "So," Noro smiled, "the Buddha taught, just as a solid rock is not shaken by the storm, even so, the wise are not affected by praise or blame. When we solve our own problems, we develop that unshakable inner foundation. As you drift deeper towards sleep, consider this ancient wisdom in your own life. Are there situations where your desire to help might actually be depriving someone of an important growth experience? Could stepping back while remaining supportively present be the greater gift in some relationships? The Buddha's teaching that all beings are the owners of their karma reminds us that each person must be allowed to navigate their own journey with all its necessary lessons. True compassion honors this reality rather than trying to circumvent it. May you rest peacefully tonight, holding this wisdom of knowing when to act and when to simply be present. May your relationships be characterized by respect for each person's unique path. And may you find the perfect balance between offering support and honoring others' need to grow through their own efforts. Recognizing harmful people, protecting your inner peace. As our journey continues, the peaceful glow of evening lanterns guides us to a remote mountain temple where the air is crisp and the distant sound of rushing water creates a natural melody for meditation. Let your body settle more deeply into comfort as we explore tonight's wisdom. Feel each breath becoming slower and more rhythmic. There comes a time in everyone's life when we must learn to recognize those who may wish to harm us, not to foster suspicion or fear, but to protect our inner peace and create healthy boundaries. This ancient wisdom remains profoundly relevant in our modern world, where relationships are complex and not always what they seem. The Buddha taught, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." This simple teaching reminds us that caring for ourselves, including protecting ourselves from harmful influences, is not selfish, but necessary. High on a misty mountain plateau, surrounded by ancient pines and flowering plum trees, stood a secluded temple known for its teachings on discernment and inner protection. Here lived the elderly and respected monk Hogi, whose clear perception of human nature drew many seekers facing difficult relationships or confusing situations. One spring morning, as cherry blossoms swirled through the temple courtyard, a young woman named Shara arrived, her face reflecting both determination and distress. She had traveled for 7 days from her coastal village, seeking wisdom about a persistent problem. After being welcomed and offered tea to refresh herself after the journey, Shara was invited to speak with Master Hogi in the temple garden. The old monk's kind eyes seemed to see through superficial concerns to the deeper questions beneath. "Master Hogi," Shara began, bowing respectfully, "I've heard that you understand how to recognize people who bring harm rather than good into our lives. Please teach me this wisdom. I find myself repeatedly drawn into relationships that leave me feeling drained and diminished. Yet, I don't see the warning signs until great damage has been done." Hogi studied the young woman's earnest face for a moment before responding. "Before we discuss recognizing harmful people," he said gently, "I must make an important distinction. The people we might call toxic or harmful are not necessarily monsters or evil beings. They are often wounded individuals whose own pain spills onto others. This understanding doesn't mean we should endure their harmful behavior," he continued. "Rather, it allows us to respond with wisdom and compassion for them and ourselves as we create necessary boundaries." Shara nodded, absorbing this perspective. It aligned with her own intuition that many who had caused her pain weren't intentionally cruel, but rather acting from their own unhealed wounds. Before determining someone is truly harmful to your well-being, Hogi advised, ask yourself, why does this person behave this way? Is there something in their past or present circumstances that might explain, though not excuse, their actions? And most importantly, is there anything I might do to prevent their behavior from continuing to affect me negatively? Only after honest reflection on these questions should you consider whether maintaining distance is the wisest choice for preserving your peace. The master invited Shara to walk with him through the temple gardens where early spring flowers were beginning to bloom alongside carefully tended paths. The natural beauty created a perfect setting for absorbing difficult truths with a peaceful heart. "Now," Hogi said, "let me share the signs that can help you recognize when someone might be harmful to your well-being. The Buddha taught us to be lamps unto ourselves, learning to trust our own discernment rather than blindly following others. These signs will help illuminate what you likely already sense, but perhaps have been taught to ignore. The first sign to watch for is constant manipulation," he began. "Imagine someone who subtly distorts reality to achieve their goals, making you question your own perceptions and memories." Hogi stooped to point out a vine that had wrapped itself around a young tree, slowly constricting its growth. Like this vine, manipulation is often gradual and difficult to notice until significant damage has occurred. The manipulator might use lies, selective truth-telling, or emotional pressure to control you. For example, he continued, consider a colleague who tells you that others speak poorly of your work and suggests you decline an opportunity, supposedly for your own good. Later, you discover they wanted the opportunity for themselves. Their seeming concern masked their true motive of removing you as competition. Shara's eyes widened with recognition. "I worked with someone exactly like that," she said quietly. "I always felt confused after our conversations, questioning decisions I'd previously been certain about." Hogi nodded. "The Buddha taught, 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. Trust your confusion as a signal. When someone's words or actions consistently leave you feeling disoriented, your inner wisdom is trying to alert you to a discrepancy between what appears to be and what truly is." They walked on following a stream that wound through the garden. The water flowed smoothly in some places and tumbled over rocks in others, yet always continued its journey forward. The second sign, Hogi continued, is a lack of genuine empathy. While many people might seem caring on the surface, those who are truly harmful often reveal a fundamental inability to care about others' feelings or experiences. This doesn't mean they never show concern, he clarified. Rather, their concern appears selectively, usually when they need something from you or when others are watching. When you're suffering and there's nothing to be gained by supporting you, their true nature becomes apparent through their indifference. Shara thought of a friend who had seemed deeply interested in her life during social gatherings, but was consistently unavailable when she faced genuine difficulties. The pattern had been there all along, but she had made excuses for it rather than accepting what it revealed. The Buddha said, "There is no fear for one whose mind is not filled with desires." Those who lack empathy often view relationships primarily as transactions. What can this person do for me? When you cease to be useful for their desires, their seeming care evaporates. They paused by a stone lantern, marking a fork in the garden path. Hogi chose the route that led higher up the mountainside, where they could look out over the valley below. The physical ascent mirrored the raising of awareness that was occurring through their conversation. The third sign, to be mindful of, the monk continued, is someone who habitually creates conflict. Even in situations where harmony prevails, this person seems to thrive on tension and disagreement. They may spread rumors, create misunderstandings between friends, or constantly find fault where none exists. Why would anyone want to create conflict? Shara asked, genuinely puzzled. Some people feel more secure in chaotic environments because they grew up in them, Hogi explained. Others use conflict to manipulate outcomes or distract from their own behavior, and some sadly enjoy the power they feel when disrupting others' peace. The Buddha taught that hatred is never appeased by hatred in this world. By non-hatred alone is hatred appeased. This wisdom doesn't mean we should continue exposing ourselves to those who sow discord. Rather, it guides us to respond without adding our own hatred to the situation. As we create appropriate distance, they reached a stone bench overlooking a spectacular view of the valley. Below them, the world seemed to unfold like a living map. Villages nestled among rice fields, rivers threading their way through forests, and in the far distance, the shimmer of the ocean. This broader perspective offered a perfect metaphor for the wisdom Hogi was sharing. The fourth sign, he said as they sat together, is an excessive need for control. Some people cannot allow others to make their own choices or live according to their own values. They may criticize your decisions, offer constant, unsolicited advice, or even actively interfere with your plans. I recognize this one clearly, Shara admitted. My former partner couldn't accept when I made decisions independently. He would question everything from how I dressed to which friends I spent time with, always suggesting his way was better. Yes, Hogi nodded, and such control often begins subtly, presented as care or concern, before gradually increasing until your autonomy has been seriously compromised. The Buddha taught, no one saves us but ourselves. No one can, and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path. Those who truly care for us respect our right to navigate our own journey, even when they might choose differently. A gentle breeze carried the scent of pine and distant flowers as they sat in comfortable silence for a few moments. Shara was processing how these insights applied to relationships in her life, both past and present. The clarity was both painful and liberating. The fifth sign, Hogi continued, is chronic dishonesty. While everyone occasionally fails to be entirely truthful, harmful people often maintain elaborate webs of deceit. They may lie even when the truth would serve them better, simply because deception has become their default way of relating to others. How can we determine if someone is chronically dishonest? Shara asked. Lies can be difficult to detect, especially from someone skilled at deception. Trust your instincts, Hoagie advised. When stories don't quite align or explanations seem unnecessarily complex, your intuition often recognizes the discrepancy before your conscious mind can articulate it. The Buddha encouraged his followers to question everything, even his own teachings, and to verify truth through their own experience rather than accepting claims on authority alone. Also, he added with gentle humor, those who are dishonest typically can't maintain consistency over time. As another Buddhist teaching states, 3 things cannot long be hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. They began walking again, following a path that wound through a bamboo grove where shafts of sunlight created patterns of light and shadow on the ground. The straight, strong bamboo stems served as a reminder of integrity, of living in alignment with one's true nature. The 6th sign to be mindful of, Hoagie continued, is someone who consistently violates boundaries. After you've clearly expressed a limit or preference, they repeatedly disregard it, perhaps dismissing your concerns as unimportant or accusing you of being too sensitive. This disrespect for boundaries can manifest in small ways, like interrupting when you speak or borrowing things without asking. Or it may appear in more significant violations, such as sharing personal information you've asked them to keep private. In either case, the pattern reveals a fundamental lack of respect for your autonomy. Shara nodded, remembering how her boundaries had often been treated as unreasonable restrictions rather than legitimate needs. I see now that respecting boundaries is about basic respect for another person. She reflected precisely, Hoagie affirmed. The Buddha taught the principle of ahimsa, non-harm, as a foundation for all relationships. Honoring another's boundaries is a fundamental expression of this principle. As they emerged from the bamboo grove, they entered a garden of medicinal plants, each carefully tended for its healing properties. Master Hoagie paused to touch a particular herb, rubbing its leaves to release a pungent aroma. The 7th sign, he said, is perhaps the most revealing. Pay attention to how you feel in someone's presence. Do you consistently feel diminished, anxious, or exhausted after interacting with them? Or do you feel energized, affirmed, and more fully yourself? Our bodies often recognize harmful dynamics before our minds can articulate what's wrong. The Buddha taught mindfulness of sensations as a primary path to wisdom. Your physical and emotional responses offer important information about whether a relationship supports your well-being or undermines it. Shara closed her eyes for a moment, scanning her body's responses as she thought about different people in her life. The contrast was striking. Some brought a sense of lightness and expansion, while others created immediate tension in her shoulders and a heaviness in her chest. She had been receiving these signals all along, but hadn't recognized their significance. The final sign I'll share with you today, Hoagie said as they completed their circuit of the garden and returned to the temple entrance, is an absence of reciprocity. Healthy relationships involve a natural flow of giving and receiving over time. While perfect balance isn't necessary or even possible, there should be a general sense of mutual care and contribution. Those who consistently take without giving, whether material resources, emotional support, or simple consideration, reveal a fundamental self-centeredness that makes genuine connection impossible. The Buddha taught that generosity creates merit and happiness for both giver and receiver. When someone shows no interest in experiencing the joy of giving, only of receiving, they miss half the blessing of relationship. They settled on cushions in a small meditation pavilion where the late afternoon sun created a golden glow. Shara's face showed both recognition and concern as she integrated these teachings. "Master Hogi," she asked, "now that I can better recognize harmful people, what should I do when I encounter them? Sometimes complete separation isn't possible, like with family members or colleagues." The old monk nodded, acknowledging the practical reality of her question. The Buddha offered guidance here too, teaching the middle way between harmful extremes. Neither complete entanglement nor absolute rejection is usually necessary. Instead, we can practice what I call compassionate distance. First, he explained, to establish clear internal boundaries about what behaviors you will and won't accept. Then, communicate these calmly and directly when needed, without accusation or blame. For example, "I'm not comfortable discussing this topic," rather than "you always try to make me talk about things that upset me." Second, limit exposure to what you can manage without compromising your well-being. This might mean shorter visits, specific settings for interaction, or having supportive people present. Third, practice emotional detachment, not in the sense of becoming cold or uncaring, but in recognizing that others' harmful behavior reflects their condition, not your worth. As the Buddha taught, you will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. The same applies to all difficult emotions that arise in challenging relationships. And finally, Hogi concluded, cultivate compassion both for yourself and for those who cause harm. Their behavior often stems from their own suffering, though this understanding never obligates you to endure mistreatment. Shara sat quietly, absorbing these teachings. After some time, she spoke again. "I've noticed something as we've talked today. Many of these harmful patterns seem connected to each other. Manipulation often involves dishonesty, control frequently violations, boundaries, and so on." Excellent observation. Hogi smiled. Yes, these traits often cluster together, reinforcing each other. Recognizing one can help you become alert to the possible presence of others. "There's something else I'm wondering," Shara continued. "How do I ensure I'm not exhibiting these harmful behaviors myself? I want to be certain I'm bringing health rather than harm to my relationships." The old monk's eyes crinkled with appreciation for this thoughtful question. The very fact that you ask shows awareness that points toward health rather than harm. Those who cause persistent damage rarely question their own behavior. Nevertheless, self-examination is a worthy practice for us all. The Buddha encouraged his followers to reflect regularly on their actions of body, speech, and mind, asking, "Do these actions lead to my own harm, to others' harm, or to both? Are these actions unwholesome with painful consequences?" If the answer is yes, such actions should be recognized and abandoned. If the answer is no, one can continue with joy, training in such actions day and night. As evening approached, painting the mountain in shades of gold and purple, Shara prepared to return to the guest quarters where she would spend the night before beginning her journey home. She bowed deeply to Master Hogi, expressing gratitude for teachings that had illuminated patterns she had sensed but couldn't previously articulate. One final guidance Hogi offered as they parted. The Buddha taught, "To understand everything is to forgive everything." As you recognize harmful patterns and create appropriate boundaries. Try to maintain compassion rather than judgment. Most people who harm others were themselves harmed, though this understanding never obligates you to endure mistreatment. Remember, 2. That people can change. The boundaries you create might actually help someone recognize their own harmful patterns and begin the journey toward healing, whether they change or not. Your compassionate distance creates space for your own peace and growth. In the months and years that followed, Shara applied these teachings in her daily life. She became known in her village for both her clear boundaries and her compassionate heart. Young people sought her advice about relationships, and she shared Master Hogi's wisdom adapted to their specific situations. Occasionally, she returned to the mountain temple to deepen her understanding. During one visit, she shared with Hogi how learning to recognize harmful dynamics had transformed not only her relationships with others, but also her relationship with herself. She had discovered that the same patterns of manipulation, control, and boundary violation could exist in her internal dialogue. Indeed, the old monk smiled. The Buddha taught that we must be our own refuge, finding within ourselves the wisdom and compassion we seek in others. As you continue to recognize and release harmful patterns, both external and internal, you create more space for genuine peace to flourish. As you drift towards sleep, perhaps you too can reflect on the relationships in your life with these ancient insights. Notice which connections leave you feeling energized and which leave you drained. Consider whether clear, compassionate boundaries might help transform certain relationships into healthier forms of connection. The Buddha taught, you can search throughout the entire universe for someone who is more deserving of your love and affection than you are yourself. And that person is not to be found anywhere. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Let this wisdom guide you as you navigate your relationships, choosing connections that honor your worth and contribute to your peace. The richness of true connection, finding peace with few friends,